2023 is just about over, and this year we got a lot of comic book movies. Some of them didn't do so great, but others did fantastic. Also, this year had several surprise comic book movies, movies that people didn't realize were actually based off graphic novels or comic book runs. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 13 2023 comic book movies that I saw, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of all of the 2023 comic book movies that you saw. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Now, as we go into this, I am filming this on Christmas Eve and trying to get this video out as quick as possible. It's the end of the year. We just got a DC movie, end of the year list, holidays. My anniversary was yesterday. So I'm filming this one fast. I'm gonna have to edit it fast, so it's gonna be a little bit more raw. Maybe that'll make it a little bit more fun. Who knows what's about to happen? And let's get started. Last place, Merry Little Batman. Now, this is a Batman movie, as you probably could tell from the title, that dropped on Amazon Prime a couple weeks back, despite the fact that Warner Brothers has the rights to DC, and they have their own streaming service, but they let Amazon Prime have their own original Batman Christmas movie. And to me, it felt like it could have been a fun little 20-minute little side story about Damian Wayne wanting to be little Batman on Christmas and doing like Home Alone at Wayne Manor or something like that. But it's 90 minutes long, so it way overstayed its welcome for me. And I felt like, right as I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. All right, I see what we're doing here. I guess it's about to end. Then it just went off in this whole other direction, and it just kind of lost me. Beyond that, I've never really liked this Cartoon Network style of animation, or when they do like, cutaway kind of gross out sort of gags, and it's just never been my thing. And there's quite a bit of the stuff I don't like in this movie. So it was too long, too much stuff I don't like, and not one I see myself revisiting. 12, The Marvels, a movie that is the sequel to a billion-dollar film, as well as a spin-off from WandaVision, as well as a follow-up to Miss Marvel, as well as a follow-up to some plot points from Secret Invasion, and probably more in there as well. And whatever went down, this movie was not what the public wanted. Despite Captain Marvel making $1 billion, this movie has by far been the biggest failure for the MCU. And obviously it's low on my list. I didn't think it was very good. I felt like the scenes could be superficially entertaining. Miss Marvel in particular was quite charming. Maybe there's a laugh in the sequence, but the actual story itself and storytelling, it just felt like they had an idea, they microwaved it during development, thought that they could just fix it in post, and so you have a movie of scattershot plot lines, and it just feels reworked and duct taped together with reshoots. It does not work on a story level for me at all. Next up, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, the big kickoff to the latest phase of the MCU, the movie that really introduces us to our new big bad Kang. And that doesn't appear to be how any of this really played out. It was a movie that, kind of like the Marvels, could be superficially entertaining in a scene. I think Jonathan Majors did a lot of good stuff in this movie, but it just felt like generic MCU film. It lost everything that made the first two Ant-Man movies unique and stand out in the franchise, and replaced it with the stuff that we get in other Marvel movies. And then they give us our big bad, but in a way that makes him feel weak. When you're trying to make me think this guy's this threat, that how are we going to stop him? And you have him defeated by Ant-Man and Hank Pym's ant friends, and there's no real stakes. There's no real consequences for this film. It just feels so toothless. It feels so weak, and it's hard to get excited for this big bad in light of that. Also, in light of last week's revelations about verdicts, it looks like that's not where this is headed anyway. So just a movie that could be superficially entertaining, but another disappointment that just feels like it has no distinctive style, flavor, or anything like that. Bringing us into the top 10, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. And I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was good enough, but it has the problem of not having anything distinct or unique to bring to the table. Kind of like what I said with Ant-Man, where the thing that made the first Shazam stick out is that it was big with as a superhero story, and it had the strong family message to it. This movie, because Billy's a little bit older, he's a little bit more mature, and so they replaced immature superhero and his shenanigans with large set pieces, more lore, more people with capes flying around, punching other CGI people in the face. But we've gotten that in so many other movies over the last 5, 10, 15 years. So it went from something that stood out because of that big as a superhero movie and moved entirely towards the more generic. That doesn't make it bad. It does make it mid. Some people use mid as a replacement word for bad. Mid means mid. Like, yeah, it's fine. It's entertaining enough while you're watching it, but 2 weeks later, you don't really remember what you saw. There's nothing about it that really stands out, that makes a distinct mark. And I think that's kind of the problem with a number of movies on this list. Number 9, Blue Beetle. And what I enjoyed about this movie is that it wasn't trying to be another big, gigantic superhero story about saving the world or anything like that. Its stakes were a little bit smaller, got a little bit tighter with what we were trying to do. And it was very much about family. And his family wasn't just side characters over there that show up for just comic relief. His family's pivotal to him. Therefore, they're pivotal to the story. They get involved in the action. They go and rescue him. And that gave it a little bit of something distinct to kind of stand out. But if you step back and look at it on a summary level, there's a lot of similarities to both Iron Man and Ant-Man in tech suit, superhero, corporate takeover where someone feels slighted. The villain gets angry and goes crazy, bonkers in the third act. Like, all of this is from Iron Man as well as Ant-Man. We've seen it before. Does have a different flavor to it, but on a story level, it is fairly familiar. We have seen it before, but I did very much like the family aspect to this film. Number 8, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the finale to the DCEU, and unfortunately, it ended with a whimper. What was so exciting 10 years ago when we got Man of Steel, a new Superman movie coming from the creative team that gave us The Dark Knight, and it closes out with another flop, going from $1 billion movie to a movie that's going to lose money for them. It's sad. As for the movie itself, though, I had fun with it. I thought it was a solid continuation of the first film, of continuing the plot points, continuing the sense of humor, the lightheartedness, the weird creature big battles, as well as kind of the James Wan action with the shot, or the camera pulled far enough back, takes long enough that you can actually see what's happening. And in particular, the relationship with Arthur and Orm, nice little touch that I felt kind of elevated a good bit of what was kind of going on in the film. So, yeah, I liked it. I think it has the same problem as most of the movies lower on this list, though, of it's just another one. Yeah, it's like the first one, but a little different. So it doesn't stand out. What when we think back on this movie in the future, we'll remember it as the end of the DCEU. We won't remember it for the villain. We won't remember it for a specific set piece. I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. But what makes it stand out? Number 7, Extraction 2, one of our surprise entries on this list. The Extraction franchise is based off the Cuidad graphic novel run from, 2014, I believe. Haven't read it, don't know anything about it, but there was source material that led to this franchise that one of the Russos wrote and Sam Hargrave directed. And while the story here, the basic idea of the Extraction franchise on a script level, very familiar, well explored territory. What elevates both of these movies is the fantastic action and stunt work. The star here isn't mega superstar Chris Hemsworth, who does a great job. The star here is Sam Hargrave, who's been working as a stuntman in the industry going back 15 years, moved on to doing stunt coordination, second unit directing, was heavily involved in Endgame, and so much of the stunt work of the best era of the MCU. He was the guy behind so much of that, whether playing Chris Evans, when Chris Evans needed to do something dangerous or a backflip or something like that. His actual brother was Captain America, was America's ass in Endgame. But he just has a great relationship with everyone, and he's a top stunt man as well as top stunt coordinator, and uses these movies as a way to just show top level action and stunt work.
For this movie, we're gonna come out with a one sequence that's over 20 minutes long, where we have real helicopters landing on the rooftop of moving trains. We're about to light 5 stunt players and Chris Hemsworth on fire.
In a way that is a real nice compliment actually to the John Wick franchise, because it's 2 different sides to it. And Sam Hargrave is friends with all the John Wick guys. He's worked on their stuff, but it's 2 different ends of highly choreographed action that looks really cool, where Extraction is a little bit more visceral, grounded, real, while still being highly choreographed and staged. John Wick has the flashiness to it. Anyway, like I said, the star here is the action from Sam Hargrave and his team. Story, little forgettable. 6, Leo. This is an Indian film that is actually inspired by A History of Violence, which was a David Cronenberg film back about 20 years ago, which was based off of a graphic novel, thus qualifies to be on this list. And this was the first Indian film I saw opening night with my wife, and it was such a fun experience where the audience was just going wild and crazy the entire movie, and it kind of has like a straightforward kind of action thriller plotline about this guy with a mysterious past with an incredible set of skills who gets wronged, and he tries to take out the guys that are after his family. But all with kind of the exaggerated epic nature that they go for in Indian cinema. And so this was just an absolute blast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so it qualifies because it has ties to A History of Violence. And this was such a fond memory for me. In 5th place, The Killer. And this movie is based off of a French comic book called The Killer, or probably whatever the French word for The Killer is. This is the latest David Fincher film. It's about a killer, obviously, but it's very much a thriller. There is one action set piece in it, one cool fight that is very visceral. You feel every hit, desperate move that each person makes to try and take the other person out. But the actual kind of a hook and appeal here is that you're just seeing this killer in action, and you're in his mind, seeing how he interprets the world, how he stages his attacks, how he tries to get away, what he values. And there's all these great moments where he goes into a store and buys some stuff, and you're like, what is he going to do with that? And it creates kind of this open loop in your mind where you're waiting to see what he's going to do. And he does something creative, crazy you wouldn't even think about as some way to get into a building or take someone out. And so just, you can't go into it thinking it's an action movie, but if you know you're going into a thriller about this killer and how he does his craft and what makes him tick and everything like that, very cool, solid David Fincher film. Number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and this movie puts the teenage into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as well as really the mutant into Mutant Ninja Turtles, where a lot of different past renditions, there's a certain immaturity to them, but you don't really get the vibe that these come off like actual teenagers with normal teenage problems and hormones, and they're just fun-loving people like Michelangelo. And in this movie, it locks in on the fact that, no, they're teenagers. What do teenagers want? How do teenagers banter with each other? How do they react when they meet a girl that they're attracted to for the first time? And they make that a part of this narrative, so it feels like this coming-of-age story, which, given that teenage is right in the name of this, shouldn't be all that surprising of a plot line for a Ninja Turtle story, but it feels so fresh for a franchise that has been making movies for over 30 years now, because we haven't really done coming of age story yet with them. Adding to that, it just has so much like just groundbreaking, cool animation. And just several different animated films this year have done interesting stuff and found ways to put images on the screen that we've never seen before, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And so, yeah, you get Ninja Turtle action, you get a Ninja Turtles that feel like teenagers, and all sorts of weird mutant stuff. And like a message is kind of powerful. Like normally they're just action movies. Someone actually kind of is exploring an idea and has a message in it too on acceptance and stuff like that. In third place, The Flash, a movie that became this big gigantic punching bag all year. Since before it came out, people were punching at it, and then it came out, didn't do well, VFX pretty awful, and so it just became this punching bag that was like the butt end of jokes, easy to pick on, so much so that because I liked this movie, if I give a negative review to a film that most people have liked, or even if I go mixed on it, I'll have people comment like, coming from the guy that liked The Flash. And I just don't even see how that's a legitimate criticism. Like, it feels like the movie where just people wanted something to dogpile on, and that just escalated the hate for it. And there's legitimate criticisms for it. I can understand why a lot of people would be like, yeah, this is mid. I can understand that. The exaggerated hate just feels like people looking for something to hate. As for me, it's a story about a son who lost his mother too young and desires to spend more time with her. That, for me, is a very profound story that I resonate with. I can understand that. My dad died when I was 20, and so whenever you lose a parent too young, you long to have more experiences with them. And there's something to that that's very interesting, profound, and powerful, and it's all in this superhero package. Adding to that, I grew up on Michael Keaton, his Batman films. I love the Flashpoint storyline, and they did a DCEU version of it. There's a lot in here that I just thought really worked, but most importantly, if you latch on to the central character's emotional arc, that journey, stuff like bad CGI you don't care about. Like, if you're watching a movie and you're locked in on the CGI, the CGI probably isn't the problem. It's that you didn't latch onto the other stuff, because if you care about the characters, you can forgive the visuals. For me, I latched onto the arc, the story, the emotion of it all, and it paid off well in the end. So for me, the fact that the CGI is not good, and they had bad ideas for how they were going to do some of it, is a very secondary issue to me. Because I cared about the story itself. I love seeing Michael Keaton again, and a lot of the things that they did in the journey. A little bit of a weird third act, but it worked for the journey that Barry was on for me. Our runner-up, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I adored the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I was infamously much less enthusiastic about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So I was thrilled when I left the theater for Volume 3 and felt like it was a very satisfying send-off for our Guardians. It found a way to be one of the most gut-wrenching, tragic stories in the MCU with so much emotion to it, but also keep the levity and the humor. Some elements that really frustrated me in Guardians 2, I think this movie helped with and made them a little bit better for me, and how certain relationships were developed and expanded upon. And it found a way to feel like a bookend of our trilogy was about this band finding family together, and then you tell a story about how they've grown in different directions, and that's okay. That they needed to be together for a time, but also at another point in time, they need to find themselves and discover what that looks like. And so just such a solid emotional conclusion to the story and this journey with these characters that I love. But coming in at number 1, I think I gotta go Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. I was really going back and forth between these two, but when I think of movies that made a mark, that just was like, wow, I have not seen this before, one that immediately comes to mind has to be Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse, as it does so many things in fresh, creative ways, whether as a Spider-Man movie, as a multiverse movie, as a comic book movie, as an animated movie. It found a way to do something we haven't seen before in multiple oversaturated genres. I mean, we even get Spider-Man movies all the time now. A multiverse movie came out 2 weeks after this one came out, and it found a way to just do something so different. And in particular with the animation, it had so many just groundbreaking techniques, ideas that complemented the storytelling, complemented the emotion of the sequences, and they were able to do wild, crazy, different things and get away with it and pull it off and get to the end of the movie and you go, oh, I just can't wait for the next part. I really hope they're able to land the ship in the next part, because that, if they fail to, then it's hard for me to enjoy this one quite as much. But if they do land the ship, then I like this one even more, as is, it's the one that made me go, wow, this year. So it comes in at number 1. Be sure to share your ranking down below. Be on the lookout over the next few days as I put out more of my end of the year list. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.